Welcome to The Explainer. What if you could find the actual blueprint for solving your community's biggest problems? And what if it was hidden inside something as simple as a spreadsheet? Well, today, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're exploring how raw data can be transformed into real-world action.
All right, let's start with a really fundamental question. I'm not talking about the legal minimum wage, the number you hear on the news. I'm talking about what it truly takes for a family to cover all their basic needs and just get by. And the amazing thing is, the answer is often hiding in plain sight, right there in the data.
So to get to that answer, here's the roadmap for our journey today. First, we're going to define what a living wage actually is. Then we'll see how data can tell a really powerful story. After that, we'll look at how to turn that story into some big ideas, explore how living standards can be so different across the country, and finally, show you how you can apply this way of thinking yourself.
Okay, first things first. We've got to understand the core concept that drives this whole process. It's a term you've probably heard a lot, but its practical meaning, that's where the real power is.
See, a living wage isn't some political number. It's a practical one. It's calculated based on the actual on-the-ground costs of essential stuff in a specific place. And that's totally different from a minimum wage, right? That's just a legal floor, and it might have zero connection to the real cost of living where you are.
Now, the tool we're using for this explainer is this incredible public resource. It's the MIT Living Wage Calculator. And the great thing is, it does all the heavy lifting for us. It gathers and calculates the real costs that families are facing in hundreds of places all across the country.
And it's the sheer depth of this data that makes it so powerful. We're not just looking at one city or one type of family. This data set covers more than 300 metro areas, 12 different family setups, and it breaks down the budget into 8 essential components. It's that level of detail. That's how we find the real stories.
So, okay, we've got this massive data set. But how do you actually get from a boring spreadsheet to a compelling story? Well, the magic really happens when you start asking the right questions, when you look for the patterns that reveal a very human narrative.
So when you first look at it, in its raw form, the data is just, rows and columns. But you can immediately spot these huge differences. A single adult in Boston, totally different needs than a family of 4. And that right there, that's our first clue. If we focus in on that family, we can start to uncover the hidden story.
And here is that story. For a family with 2 kids in Boston, just look at this. You might assume housing is going to be the biggest bill, right? But it's not. Childcare is their single biggest expense. It eats up more than a quarter of their entire budget. Now, an insight like that changes everything.
So this is the crucial point, right? Once we have an insight like that, what do we do with it? How do we take a startling fact from a chart and turn it into something that actually helps people in that community?
Well, by comparing different family types side by side, the data lets us pinpoint these very specific financial pressure points. For a single person in Boston, the biggest challenge is housing. But for a family, it's clearly childcare. Different groups are fighting different battles, and the data tells us exactly what those battles are.
And this brings us to the absolute core of the lesson. A simple but really powerful 3-step process for innovation. Step 1, use the data to find the biggest need. Step 2, brainstorm a solution. If childcare is the problem, what could a local business or service actually do about it? And then step 3, you nail that down into a clear project proposal. It's a straight line from data to action. The data also reveals another crucial truth. There really isn't one single American standard of living. It's way more accurate to say there are many standards of living, and they change, dramatically, depending on where you are.
Just look at this comparison. For the exact same family, 2 adults, 1 kid, the cost to live comfortably in the Boston metro area is $50,000 higher per year than in the Detroit area. $50,000. That's a staggering difference, and it's driven entirely by location.
And this is the kind of question that this data just forces us to ask. Why? Why would one region be so much higher than another? Answering that question pushes us to dig deeper, to consider all the local factors at play. Things like the housing market, different state and local tax policies, or maybe the cost of public transit. The wage is just the final number. The why is buried in the details of the community itself. Which brings us to, honestly, the most important part.
how you can use this. This whole process is designed to give you a powerful new framework, a new way of thinking, to turn simple observation into real innovation, right in your own community.
Think about it. This whole process builds an incredibly valuable set of skills. You learn how to analyze data, how to spot patterns, and how to pinpoint very specific needs. But the most important part? You learn how to translate those insights into concrete, evidence-based proposals that could make a real difference. It's basically where data literacy meets entrepreneurial thinking. It's a real game changer.
And that really brings us to our final thought. This data, it's public, it's powerful, and it's just waiting to be explored. So I'm going to leave you with this question. If you had this data for your own town, and you found that single biggest pressure point, what community problem would you solve first? Because the answer? Well, the answer could be the start of something truly amazing.